Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fun Science. I'm your host, Nick Barbacino, and we will be talking about nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, often associated with death and destruction, has suffered from terrible PR and negative Hollywood portrayals. But to experts in renewable clean energy, it is synonymous with hope for a fossil fuel independent future. When we talk about nuclear energy, what we are really talking about is the conversion of nuclear energy to electrical energy, either by fission or fusion of atoms. Most reactors work by fission, the splitting of atoms. For more on this, we go to our nuclear physics correspondent, Kimoda.
So as you can see from the equation, one neutron combines with uranium-235, forming an unstable compound nucleus, uranium-236. This unstable nucleus splits into two stable nuclei, barium-141 and krypton-92. In addition to these two nuclei, 3 neutrons are also emitted, as well as a high amount of energy, denoted in the equation by Q. Since uranium-236 emits 3 neutrons in the reaction, these neutrons can be absorbed by other uranium-235 nuclei, resulting in a chain reaction. This leads to exponentially high amounts of energy being released by a single reaction.
This energy then goes to transform large amounts of water into pressured steam that powers a turbine, transforming mechanical energy into electrical energy. This process of heating water to produce energy is also shared by coal, oil, and natural gas. But while all these produce damaging greenhouse gases, nuclear energy produces radioactive waste. This may be incredibly dangerous if a reactor were to melt down or malfunction in any way. Both human and animal life would take a serious toll if a nuclear power plant were to blow. Because of this, nuclear power plants have become increasingly unpopular on a local basis. Gallup and Pew Research polls show that while many support the expansion of nuclear energy programs, they do not want facilities in their area. In areas like New York City that consume a lot of electricity but have had incidents with nuclear energy in the past, down the river at 3 Mile Island that is, this is especially pronounced. To find out more, I sat down with local Giants fan Mr. David and asked him about 3 Mile Island and growing up in New York City at the time.
No, I mean, 3 Mile Island was not that close to. I mean, it wasn't like this is an immediate threat to us, but it certainly was kind of a scary thing. And it also has to be recognized that there was also a cultural component. That there had been a movie with Jane Fonda that had come out, I think, just slightly before, called The China Syndrome, which also dealt with the idea of a nuclear power plant having a meltdown and bad things were going to happen and all that. More relevant, more germane to where I was in New York, there's maybe, I don't know, not too far away, but just up the river, there's a place called Indian Point, which is, one that, certainly was providing energy for New York City environs, metropolitan areas needs, but there was also that fear of, like, it's still nuclear, like, what happened there could happen here, like, this would be bad, and, I wouldn't say it was, like, an overwhelming fear, but there was definitely something, like, when people mentioned it, your first thought was, like, oh, yeah, that place is there. So.
Indian Point has since been closed due to overwhelming unpopularity amongst the people. People seem to be willing to incur a greater cost on their utilities bill and use less clean energy if it means peace of mind. But it is not the dramatic Hollywood explosions they fear, it is the toxic waste. The average nuclear power plant produces around 20 metric tons of radioactive waste a year, and the industry as a whole produces up to 2,500 metric tons annually.
You are dealing with a highly lethal, toxic element and byproducts of element that kind of stick around for a long time.
So where does the waste go? Many fear it will end up in the poorer, more marginalized areas that have less of a say in public affairs.
Invariably it's the least spoken for elements of society to get this. So, this is why we dump this stuff in the poor neighborhoods or, the near the native, reservation or what have you. It's like, we're going to put it in a place that will affect the people who have the least ability to scream and be heard about it.
Yeah.
That's sort of thing, and that's unfortunately par for the course in our country. It seems. Just looking at illness rates, pathology rates, things of that. Where do we put the incinerator? Where do we put the garbage dump? Where do we put the toxic stuff? I mean, it's not shocking that like Flint gets a bad water, whereas Grosse Pointe, they're fine. So
Nuclear waste may sound scary, but it may actually be good news. Unlike CO2, nuclear waste can be easily collected and removed from the plant, and 95% will decay to background levels within 100 years. The US government and other countries have produced large facilities to safely store nuclear waste away from people. An example of this is the Yukon Mountain Repository in Nevada, a remote desert location. But there is a catch. This facility, which began construction in 1987, remains unfinished, thanks to Congress, which is taking decades to approve, license, and fund the project. Furthermore, the storage itself costs millions a year for each power plant, so most nuclear power plants are storing waste on site in protected environments, even though Congress has passed legislation to prevent this. But without anywhere else to store the nuclear waste, it remains the only option unless...
Shoot it into the sun!
On the other hand, radioactive waste may be the least of the planet's environmental concerns at the moment. In an age where climate change is becoming an ever greater problem, this is critical in deciding whether the switch to nuclear energy is worth it. Global sea levels rose about 17 centimeters in the last century, and with 15 of the 16 years on record occurring since 2001, glaciers, ice sheets, and marine habitats are vanishing. Nuclear energy could really put a dent in all this. So why don't we rely on nuclear energy? Some people prefer safer, less efficient sources of energy. What do you think about nuclear power? Would you rather have pay less and incur somewhat of a risk, or would you rather play it safe and maybe pay $10 extra a month?
I think with the right safety precautions, we can reduce the risk of disaster to a reasonable amount, and I think it's worth what it does for the environment and the pay decrease. I think solar and wind would probably be the better option, just because the risk of disaster and the risk it brings to society is lower.
So what do you think about nuclear power?
I don't know much about it, but it seems dangerous to me, and I wouldn't want it in my neighborhood.
Are you for or against nuclear energy?
I'm for nuclear energy. I think it's a great alternative.
What do you think about nuclear energy?
It's kind of scary.
I mean, it's definitely really powerful, but it's also pretty hazardous.
Hi, what do you think about nuclear energy?
I think it's really good and
What do you think
efficient.
about nuclear energy?
Really helpful for the world.
Yeah, what do you think about nuclear energy?
I think when they break the two atoms apart, it sets a good energy for the electricity that we use in the
What do you
world.
think about nuclear energy?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know anything about it.
What do you think about nuclear power, Jen?
Nuclear power seems super unsafe. Definitely wouldn't want it in my neighborhood. Of course not. Has it even been tested? We don't know.
So, what do you think about nuclear energy?
I think that nuclear energy is a really smart idea because it's helpful for the environment, and the chances that something will go wrong are very low, and I think it's a better energy source than burning fuel.